Good evening. Welcome to episode 21 of the Wulong Talks podcast. Hi, my name is Jason, and I'm the host of the show. And as always, I'm joined by my crew. So first, let's introduce the Man Geek up in Manchester. Big A, what's up, son?
Evening. Happy Star Wars Day to those listening on the 4th of May.
Yeah, no doubt. And of course, with me down south is the Rustling Kid, Richard. Rich, say what's up, man.
What's up, man? May the fourth be what happy? Yeah, well, I haven't said.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, we hope you're all good listeners. We hope you've had a great week. We've had a great week. This week, we've been able to check out the latest movie in the ever-growing franchise that is the Guardians of the Galaxy. We've checked out Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.2, so this episode is devoted entirely to that. So we'll give you a full review of the movie. We'll break down what parts we liked, what parts we didn't, and we'll give you a final score as well. Now, I must warn you, if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want it spoiled, it's probably not a good idea to listen to this right now. You may want to go and watch the movie first and then come back and listen so you can join in on the discussion with us at a later date. But as said, final warning for those who don't like spoilers, there's going to be spoilers ahead. So if you don't like spoilers, switch off now. All right, man. Well, as said, we got to check out Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 this week. First of all, guys, just want to get your overall thoughts on the movie. So before we get into like the nitty gritty of characters and things like that, just let me know what you thought in terms of the overall movie and whether you liked it or disliked it. So, Rich first, what did you think?
yeah, I liked it. Yeah, I liked it a lot. Obviously, what we'll wax lyrical about it in a little while. Overall thoughts, not better than the first, but yet still a very good movie. And then that's just to a few things that a few niggles and and moans that I can have about the film, which we'll go into more detail. But anybody out there listening, yeah, definitely go and see it. I think it's still a very good franchise within the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Cool, cool. And Alvin, what about you, man?
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was really great, really funny, great action, kind of great sci-fi stuff. And yeah, for me, I personally thought it was just as good as the first. I didn't necessarily think it was better. I think there's some things that kind of like were better, but it all kind of evens out, to be honest. So it's pretty much level pegging. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Cool, cool. And that's a third from me, so we're not going to be very original about this, but yeah, basically, I agree with both of you. I thought the movie was a lot of fun. For some reason, I found this one more fun than the first one, although I do think the first one is a slightly better movie overall. There were one or two nitpicks that I had with this one, but there was nothing to make me, kind of drastically consider the movie to be anything other than a really, really solid sequel. So, yeah, for me, it's a thumbs up from me as well. All right, let's get into the details, man. So, when this movie kicks off, we're kind of thrown right into the action, basically from the opening credits. What did you guys think of the opening scene and the way that it introduced the characters and where they were at, where they're at now at this point in the story? Um, Alvin, was there anything that kind of stood out for you in that?
Yeah, it's that opening, kind of like when the credits start and that with Mr. Blue Sky playing. It's a reintroduction to like characters who a lot of people have grown to love, and I didn't realize this at the time, but it actually echoes the beginning of the first movie where Peter's dancing about on Morag. It's pretty much the same kind of thing, but with Baby Groot, and the rest of the crew. And it's just a nice little comedy piece. You get to see all the characters. Um, and obviously Baby Groot is fucking adorable, so you get to see him dance about and that. And yeah, no, I really enjoyed it because it was some crazy wackiness. You got to see them all interact and just reminded us to who everyone is and how they all interact with one another.
Yeah, the dynamic between them in that opening scene really does kind of set the tone for the whole movie. And I love the way that they're kind of fiddling about with the Walkman to get the music going before they get started. And Baby Groot kind of struggling with the Walkman as well was really funny and a really nice touch. He becomes something of a character that I was a bit worried about at first, with Baby Groot, because I thought it might get a little bit annoying if it's too cutesy, if you know what I mean. But that wasn't the case at all. But we'll get down to the details and stuff like that. But yeah, that initial scene, the way it's handled, is really really good. Rich, how about you? Was there anything that kind of stood out for you in that opening scene?
The opening scene. Yeah, I mean, like I noticed the whole the same what Alvin said about it, being the same introduction as like the first one. Uh, but I think the standout for me was the whole thing of is that was kind of like their version of the Age of Ultron, where you see the Avengers coming in and they're just working as a team, right? But then, like, come by the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy, even though they've kind of like done whatever they need to do, this introduction shows you that they're still not good at what they do. They're still just kind of like just still kind of winging it, which is like one of the things that that adds to the flavor of the whole team dynamic, which is which is the reason why we like that team. But the thing that stood out to me was the whole when Groot's dancing and the bit where Drax lands beside him, and it's obviously like a throwback to the end of like the first one, where when Drax looks at Groot and then he stops dancing, and, then he looks away and then Groot starts dancing again. But I mean, number one, that's funny as hell, and then number two, like they're still in the middle of a freaking battle against this giant slug alien thing, which is just funny in itself. So it's like I like that, I like that. But yeah, that was the main scene that stood out for me in that introduction. Aside from the whole thing of that the team still isn't meshing well, but in them not meshing well, they still managed to pull out the stops and get the job done.
Yeah, it's really cool that you mentioned that, actually, because that was a very nice piece of foreshadowing to start off with, because it kind of showed how, because of the frictions within the team, they ended up having to wing it, as you said, and they just about got the job done, but it certainly wasn't done with any kind of panache or teamwork. It was just kind of everybody doing their own thing and then arguing with each other whilst they were doing it, whilst Baby Groot was dancing to to the intro track. So yeah, that was very cleverly handled. I did like that opening scene. Do either of you know the name of that beast they were fighting? Because I think it's supposed to be something from the comics, isn't it?
No, I can't remember. It was a week ago, so I literally can't remember what it was
So
called.
so you cut out for me. What was that?
Oh, I was just saying, if you could remember the name of the beast that they fight at the beginning, because I think it's supposed to be something that's actually from the comics. So I'm not sure.
You know what? It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember it because Drax. Oh no! Wait, no. No, I'm thinking about the batteries. What he says about the batteries, not the. Not
Yeah,
the
I don't even know. But here's a bit of information as well. You see, in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, where Peter's doing the whole dancing thing at the beginning, and he comes across like this big little like chasm type of thing, and he looks down, and there's some like alien things swimming in the water, and then he uses the boots to jump over the gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, those aliens are the aliens from the James Gunn movie Sliver.
Oh, right.
Yeah, just a bit of a sci-fi
Okay.
nerdism there, man. So yeah,
I didn't even
but
make that connection. So yeah, that's well spotted.
yeah, no. I saw. I didn't clock it myself. I think I saw it in an interview with him or something like that. But
Right.
but yeah, in relation to the original question, don't fucking know, mate. Like,
Yeah, we're all stumped by this one, listener. So if you know what the name of that creature is, please let us know. Because yeah, I would like to know. And as I said, I'm almost certain it is a creature from the comics. But I just can't remember what the name is. So oh well, we move on. Was there any kind of standout scenes in the movie for either of you guys? Anything that really kind of struck a chord in one way? Either it was very funny or very action packed, or something that kind of touched a nerve. Alv, was there anything in particular that stood out for you?
Anything in particular? You know what? There's just so much to choose from that it's kind of difficult. You know what? Actually, for me, a standout thing for me was just like, fuck me, that is wicked. Was obviously when Yondu and Rocket free themselves from being in locked in that jail cell, and it's just them walking around the ship killing everyone, and Yondu whistling and the arrow going everywhere, and there's just bodies falling all over the place, and just both walking in slow motion. and looking absolutely fucking badass.
Mm.
That bit is amazing.
Yeah, that bit is brilliant. The whole way is just is filmed, the way it's been put together,
Mm.
the camera shots they
The
use, because
music.
at one point they use like a crane shot as well, where he's just kind of in the middle, and then the arrows sort of going all around, and you can see the red trail that it leaves, and when the lights are off, and yeah, it just looks amazing. It looks absolutely amazing. The way they constructed that scene was just brilliant, man. Really, really good. Rich, how about you?
I like that scene as well. But I think my favorite when it shows when it comes towards the end and it shows that the top view and you can just see like the red like arrow line just flying around.
Hmm.
But action wise, I think the scene that stood out for me was Rocket, man.
Hmm.
When the Ravagers come to when the Ravagers follow the Guardians to that
Hmm.
planet that they've landed on, and they try and they and they get to like the base where they've camped out, and they think they've got Rocket figured out, and he's waiting in the trees, and
Hmm.
he's laid all the traps. Yeah,
Hmm.
like it makes sense, and I think the reason why that stands out as well is that we know that he's good at something, but we don't know what. Like we know he's good at shooting guns. We know how he's good at making bombs. Like he's a bit of a tinker and everything. But even though he doesn't know, us as the viewer and us as readers, we still look at him and go like he's a freaking raccoon. Like what is he going to be able to do?
Hmm.
And that basically just proves that he has the body of a raccoon, but he's something a little bit more. And I mean like the way how he takes them out, and even when it comes down to the physical bit, like they cover all angles. So like he like he's a bit like Leon, where he's good at like taking out opponents from this distance with this weapon, taking out opponents from with a different type of weapon from this distance, and then even when it comes to the hand-to-hand combat, he still shows that he's badass. And that would be like you see the Darth Vader scene in Rogue One, where we finally see Darth Vader do some badassery to be like, okay, cool, this is the reason why he's fucking feared all over the galaxy. That was Rocket's scene for me that showed the reason why he deserves to be on this team. Like we've kind of seen what everyone else can do. We know Gamora's the assassin of the universe for like Thanos X. Um, we know that Drax the Destroyer, his name says all. So but Raccoon Rocket finally earned his kudos with that scene there.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think like for me, probably the rocket scene in the forest as well when he's being hunted by the Ravagers is again really good. It's just really really well done. The way that the whole thing is framed, and as I said, it as you said, Rich, it really explains a lot about Rocket's character, his skill set, his what his motivations are. The bit where he has them like he sets like that kind of electronic spring trap, and it keeps
Hmm.
pushing him up in the air every time he presses the button, and he's just cackling away like it's the funniest thing he's ever seen in his life. It just tells you so much about like how much of an asshole Rocket it really is,
Mm,
because he's just sitting there tormenting them now when he could have put them down ages ago. But he's doing this for his own amusement now. And I love that about Rocket. We'll go into our favorite characters and stuff in a minute, but yeah, I just love that dynamic that Rocket brings to the movie, and that scene in particular is really outstanding. What did you guys think of the Sovereign in the movie? Because I at first I was a bit like, I'm not sure about these characters. I liked the little back and forth between the leader and Peter Quill in the beginning, but I thought, oh, this could be a bit one note. But as the movie went on, it actually got really funny. Like, and there's another part that I liked when they arrive on the Ravagers planet, or the planet where the Ravagers are hiding out. To hire some of them to find the Guardians, which is just before the rocket scene. Um, and the queen of the sovereign is walking out on the red carpet, and the red carpet only doesn't roll out too far. It
mm.
only rolls out so far and then stops. And then like there's a look of embarrassment on both the leader's face and the person who's rolling out the carpet. And I really liked that. I really liked the kind of the arrogance of the sovereign, and the fact that they constantly believe that they're better than everybody else because they're genetically engineered to be better than everyone else, or so they believe. um and the whole way that they kind of conduct themselves really, really made me laugh. So I really did enjoy the Sovereign towards the end of the movie. I was actually quite enamored by them. But what did you guys think of them? Did you think they made kind of effective? I guess they weren't the main antagonists, but sort of foils for the Guardians. Did you think they were quite effective in that way? Rich, you can go first.
I mean, I found them entertaining. That's what I found them, and but it just kind of dragged out a bit, where it just felt like they were 2D, like 2D comedy characters,
Hmm.
which I was like, okay, cool, I understand, but I didn't really feel any form of danger from them, and that got a bit boring sometimes when they did appear on screen. I mean,
Hmm.
I was just telling you, I just found them more interesting because I know their backstory somewhat, or well, comic book wise, I know their
Hmm.
backstory, and
Are you there, Rich?
battle because they actually deem themselves too good to
Oh,
do
Rich,
that type
sorry,
of
we
thing.
we lost you for a second, so you're gonna have to repeat what you just said there.
You're the Alvin. Hey,
What?
what am I gonna have to repeat? No, it sounds like you're about to laugh at me. I have to repeat everything from the beginning.
No, not
Uh,
from the beginning.
no, but just where you were going.
The Sovereign.
Yeah, about the Sovereign and stuff because we lost you there.
Yeah,
You went quiet.
I didn't mind them. They got on my nerves a bit just because it just felt like they were just kept on repeating the same thing. Like they'd come into battle, get taken out, come into battle, get taken out, and then it'd cut to like the sovereign people going into that even almost like arcade machine type of thing, and then trying to take out the guardians. Like I didn't feel any real threat or danger from them. Um, but like I said, I was more interested in the whole thing of that. I know what type of race of people they are. So I was just more interested to see like where they're gonna go with that, and if they are gonna go down the route which they eventually did, which I thought they were going to. Um, so yeah, so I mean, so that was fun about them, but nothing else really stood out for me. They weren't
Okay.
like, oh wow.
All right. Fair enough. Alvin, same question to you, I guess. What did you make of them?
Well, to me, it became quite clear earlier on that that probably become more important later down the line, like in the third volume.
Mm.
So I just kind of enjoyed them for what they were, really, which was pretty much the equivalent of those guys from Every Which Way But Loose, who always chase after Clint Eastwood. And then obviously they get the bikes destroyed and all that kind of business. It was just like that. But yeah, they were interesting to have in there because it did, because obviously we knew that Ego was going to be evil. It was pretty obvious to guess, but it did add in that extra something there. Otherwise, it would have been a bit bare, I think, the film, because we all would have seen the whole Ego thing coming, and that would have been the only thing there was. Whereas this additional thing with the Sovereign, at first I thought they were going to be like the main bad guys, but then it kind of turned around and I was like, oh, it's a bit different. But now I thought, oh, all right. I'm just looking forward to seeing as to how they play into the third volume.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I think the point of kind of introducing them now was like, I guess, to get people used to the idea because, as you said, it looks like they're going to play a big part in the future, and we'll get to a point where we can chat a little bit about the future of the franchise and stuff as well. But yeah, it obviously looks like it was set up to give you an idea of who they are, because they're going to play a key role further on down the road. So from that point of view, I guess they kind of serve their purpose really. But yeah, as I said, I did kind of grow to like them as the movie went on. So and there's definitely something interesting they're doing with them. But we'll get to that. Um, were there any characters in particular that you enjoyed more than you did in the first movie, from the Guardians crew? Were there any of the new characters that you enjoyed? So basically, who were your favorite characters? Is what I'm asking you. Um, so Alvin, was there anybody who like new who stood out to you, and also was there any of the existing characters that you felt had a better arc and a better character development in this one?
Hmm. Okay. So what? Both old and new.
Yeah, both old and new.
Okay. Well, in terms of old, yeah, for me it has to be Drax, just because although he didn't particularly do that much fight or anything like that, He's just the scenes that he was given, the comedic scenes. He just plays them so matter of fact that they just fucking just made me laugh so much. I like the scene where he tells Mantis how disgusting she is. Fucking like I don't know how to come up with some of this shit. And also, I think he had one of the best jokes in the movie, which they set up at the beginning about him having sensitive nipples and him not using the arrow wing because of it. And then later on, like towards the end, to use an arrow wing, they put one on him, and as he kind of shoots up into the sky, he shouts out "my nipples," which was just a great setup because at first you're like, okay, that's pretty funny. His nipples are sensitive, so he's not wearing one of those. But then you assume that's the joke and it's over. But then the fact there's a callback, I was just like, that's fucking genius. But yeah, now Drax in terms of old characters, in terms of new, there's not. I don't think there's particularly a lot to from. Um, hmm. Yeah, I mean, I did like the taser face stuff. That was all right. But in terms of new characters, can I pick Ego?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I thought Ego was quite an interesting concept. And yeah, the fact that kind of 20th Century Fox gave Marvel the rights to Ego, they made a mistake because like I was saying to Richard like in a phone call like the other day that if they had kept that, that would have been a wicked thing to do, like with the Fantastic Four. That character would have enabled an interesting thing to be done with the Fantastic Four story. But obviously, that's not going to happen because you may know Fantastic Four movies aren't probably going to be made for quite a while now. But yeah, no, I really liked Ego and the way Kurt Russell played him. And you don't see a lot of Kurt Russell these days. It was just nice. He was just solid. He was good. And you know, his name's Ego. So when it came to the crunch, and he was quite egotistical, then it all made sense. And he had the right amount of like kind of arrogance to him when we kind of are revealed to his true nature.
Yeah, Rich, how about you? Same question.
Yeah, I think for new characters, it was definitely Ego did the same thing for me as well, man. Like, it just reminded me how much of a good character or a good actor Kurt Russell is. Like he was just smooth as hell, man. Like you could see the reason why, he was able to go to to all of those planets and basically just, mac all of those women, and sow his seeds. Um, but I like the fact that there's almost you could see the similarity between him and Peter. And I think that even like when they picked Kurt Russell, but that first opening scene when he comes out from the ship and it shows the close up of his face and he starts saying, "Yeah, Peter, I'm your father. Can't you tell by the rugged good looks?" And it shows a close up of each of their faces, and and Kurt Russell, he essentially could be like an older version of what's his name? What's his name again?
Peter
What's his
Quill?
name?
Cool.
The real actor, man. For fuck's sake, stop
Oh,
laughing,
Chris
man.
Pratt.
Chris fucking Pratt. Yeah. Like he essentially could be like an old version. See how like they made Joseph Gordon-Levitt like a young version of Bruce Willis and Looper for prosthetics. So yeah, but Ego, like like Alvin pretty much touched on those points. Like they just they did so well of a character that on paper just sounds fucking crazy. And that's the thing that they keep on doing so well with this Guardians of the Galaxy franchise is that they just they must sit down and be like, okay, listen, just think of the craziest fucking thing, yeah, that they wouldn't let us do, and then top that. And they just seem to knock and they seem to knock it out the park, and they did it perfectly with the Ego character.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the characters that I most enjoyed probably would be Rocket. I really liked Rocket's arc in this movie, because he kind of all we kind of know about Rocket from the first movie is that he's, as you said earlier on, Richard, he's a bit of a dickhead who kind of is very good at building things. Knows how to make bombs, knows how to make weapons, and is extremely sarcastic, and that's about it. But in this film, through kind of the relationship he has with Peter Quill and the way that the two kind of bicker and argue, and the conversations he then goes on to have with Yondu, you get a bit more, the layers start to get peeled back on him a little bit more, and you start to realize that there's actually quite a sensitive soul inside of him there. And he seems to view it almost as like a vulnerability, like exploring these feelings is makes him vulnerable. So he kind of covers it up with the tough exterior and the being a dickhead to everybody. And I remember a certain bit in the film as well where Yondu says to him, like, Jesus, you really are an asshole, aren't you? Like, you're just, there's just no good in you. And he's like, yeah, pretty much. Oh, sorry, no, he calls him a professional asshole. That's it, which is slightly different. But yeah, I really liked Rocket's like arc that he went through in this movie, and he's always been like my favorite character. Like when I started reading the comic when they had the relaunch a couple of years ago, he was really the character that I gravitated to, and I'm been so glad with the way they've translated that from the page to the movies. They've done it real justice, and Bradley Cooper's voice work has been amazing with that character. Really, really terrific. He's just breathed so much life into it, to the point where it's impossible to imagine anyone else really doing Rocket Raccoon, because he's done it too well. And I like the joke about the the trash panda coming back to it as well, because that kind of showed Rocket's naivety as well. So it showed that there is something there with him. So Rocket's the old character I like, and the new character I like is probably Mantis. I really liked Mantis actually. I was a bit worried that she might not be the right addition to the group, but she has a kind of like a complete innocence in a way that even Baby Groot didn't really have it. And the empathy skills that she has and the ability to kind of impact on people's feelings and things like that was really, really cool, and very well done. There's the famous gag in the trailer, obviously, where she exposes Peter's feelings for Gamora. But it was interesting the way that they did it. So yeah, that I thought was very cool. And the actress who played out, her name escapes me off the top of my head, but she did a really, really good job at managing that, because that's a tricky role to pull off as well. So yeah, I was very pleased with the work that she did on that. So yeah, those are probably my two standouts, I would say. What did you guys think about the music and the soundtrack in this one? Because it was quite different to the first movie. Did that kind of take you out of the movie at all, or did it have any kind of different impact or different feel for this movie?
Is that anybody?
Sorry, yeah, that's open to both of you. So either one of you can go.
Okay. Okay, I'll go. Yeah, I love the music in this one as well. It was just as good as the first, I think. The only thing is that there wasn't really any memorable songs, being played. Like you see, like with the first one, you've got you got Hooked in a Feeling, you've got the Jackson 5, you've got a couple of other tracks here and there. With this second volume, as good as it was, there's nothing that stands out for me. I mean, the only one that did stand out for me and worked for the scene perfectly was the Cat Stevens song
Hmm.
that plays at the end, which for some reason I keep on forgetting the name of the song. But that's the only one that stood out for me. But the music was still good. Like it's still a staple point of the whole of the of the franchise. It's like it's a thing in itself. For the Guardians films now, isn't it?
Hmm. Yeah, very much so. Music has become as much a character as anything else we see on the screen, and they do carry that over quite well. Alvin, anything that stood out, or
Yeah, that Cat Stevens song is called Father and Son, by the way, Richard.
Oh, that's it.
Um,
Yeah, thanks.
yeah, in terms of music, like there was always that worry that it would become like Suicide Squad, you know what I mean? And the music would just be too much, and it'd be every 10 seconds, it'd be a different track from different genres, and you'd just be like, what the hell? But I can't actually remember that much of the music. The only tracks I remember are The Chain by Fleetwood Mac and Mr. Blue Sky, and that's about it. But quite remember any more tracks. That probably means that what they did have didn't do the movie any harm and kind of played their role where they were meant to. Otherwise, they'd probably stand out to me. But I think because they did it so well in the first one and they do it well in this one, they literally didn't register as to when I was listening to a popular song or or it was the film score. So I can only assume that must be a good thing.
Mm.
It's either that or they didn't
yeah,
particularly pick memorable songs for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the one song that stood out was you mentioned it, "The Chain" by Fleetwood Mac, because it kind of, again, it was picked at a specific point in the film where each, member of the team was kind of engaged in battle, was struggling against kind of fighting back against ego and his actions on the planet. And it's the point, it said, where they're all kind of under pressure, and that chain that they have between them as a family is under severe stress. And the whole point of the song is, you'll never break our chain, you'll never break our bonds, regardless of what is going on. And it worked really, really well. And you made a good point, Alvin. I was worried as well that it was going to start to become like Suicide Squad, where it's just going to be like somebody's got their greatest hit CD and put it in a CD player and said, okay, go, and then that's it. But clearly that's not the case. And I mean, that wasn't the case in the first movie. Certainly, James Gunn picked the right tracks for the right scenes, and it looks like he's done it again here. And the use of father and son, as you said as well, was the thing that really stood out to me. But yeah, like you two, I'm struggling to to actually think of other songs. But I guess, as you said, Alf, that's probably a good thing. So
Yeah, it must be, because otherwise, if you notice them too much, then there's the potential that you may hate them. So,
Yeah.
so like the Suicide Squad thing. So I can
yeah,
only assume it must be. That's all I can assume.
yeah, it's a fair point. Fair point. Well, one of the key kind of themes in this movie as well is family, and the way that families kind of interact with one another, and the problems that they face with each other and with outside events, and how those affect and shape the people that we become. Um, Richard, I know you were big on kind of the theme of family for this movie and the way that it's kind of handled. So, did you want to just spend like a couple of minutes going into kind of how you saw that family dynamic playing out, and the importance of it?
Yeah, no, I just think that it just feels, well, first things first, essentially, like the, I mean, the overall, it is about family, but it is always going to be Peter's story. That's the thing. And it's the first thing, is the main story in the first one as well, and it's the main story in the second one. Um, and you don't really notice it in the second one, maybe, and I think probably because the pacing of the film, which is something we'll touch upon later on. But then it isn't until, like, like when Peter finally comes to the realization that, okay, listen, like, my dad, like, I'm an a-hole, but my dad's a real a-hole. And when it comes from the revelation that, listen, he put the tumor in his mom and everything like that. But it's that family dynamic that I like, and it feels natural as well. Like, just because, like, your family doesn't mean you have to get on. What you do is that you fucking make it work.
Hmm.
And that's how family is. This isn't a Brady Bunch, like, and I love that thing about it. And I mean, which is something which, if you think about it, throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it generally is about family. There is some form of like family issues happening at some point, if not with a character, then at least in the team, or let's say like the Avengers themselves. There's always some form of like, somebody who needs to be mentored, or to be taught by somebody else, or they've had some form of like issues with a father figure, and it's usually a father figure. I've noticed in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've always had some form of like issues with a father figure. But the running theme through the Guardians is that, like I said, you don't have to be from, number one, you don't have to be blood, and number two, you don't even have to be from the same fucking planet. If you look at the family of the Guardians of the Galaxy, there's a tree that only says his own name, a fucking raccoon who doesn't know what a raccoon is, the baddest assassin in the universe, like somebody who doesn't know what a metaphor is, but and then you just got this lumbering man child. That's family. You don't get to choose who you have as family, but what you do get to choose is, like, how far you're willing to go for them, to go through for them. And like, and they just nail it perfectly, man. Like, the film constantly tugs at my heartstrings when I watch the first one, and the second one is definitely up there as well.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very true, man. It does a lot of good work in terms of like setting up this idea of family, as said, and the family dynamic, and that you can't, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. Um, I particularly kind of like the the subplot in the film between Gamora and Nebula, and the idea of their relationship and how Nebula basically says, all I ever wanted really was a sister, but all you were interested in was being the best out of the two of us. You wanted to prove you were number one all the time. You had to beat me at everything, but all I ever wanted from you was, a sister. And you can kind of see how that sibling rivalry between the two of them has kind of has damaged their relationship to that point. That I actually thought was handled really well, surprisingly
Mm.
well, for a comic book movie to deal with something that poignant, and that touching was really good. So yeah, that really stood out for me. Alf, did you have any thoughts on the idea of the family dynamic and the themes of family in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me as interesting that I can't think of that many like big budget blockbuster movies that managed to have something like the theme of like a surrogate family, and how important family is, and somehow doesn't come across preachy. Like at any point, it all just seems like legit and genuine and from the heart. So like, especially when later on in the film, towards, well, yeah, pretty much near the end, when obviously escaping ego, and kind of Peter has this like flash of kind of him growing up, and being taught things by Yondu, and that's when like you realize like Yondu's more of a dad than like anyone like could have asked for, you know what I mean, in his specific situation. And like him realizing that he had a dad all along, like, sounds cheesy, but when you see it in a movie, it's actually kind of like a heartfelt moment. And I didn't expect to see it. So when you see those flashes, and you just like instantly, you're just like, he's his fucking dad. You know what I mean? And he's only just realizing this now as well. So yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting because, like I said, that I can't think of that many other big blockbuster movies that managed to, have all kind of like the thrills and that, and then also have something that's actually kind of meaningful as well. That isn't super cheesy. Because in the hands of someone else, that shit could have been awful. So James Gunn, I don't know. He just makes it work. He's a fucking magician.
Yeah, he's got a magic hat, mate. But no, yeah, you're right. I mean, everything that you both of you said is absolutely spot on. And as you said, Alf, like it's so rare in this genre and in this type of movie that you get these kind of issues handled with the kind of sensibility and intelligence that it's handled with, and the real, very real emotions that it's handled with. Unfortunately, with comic book movies, sometimes you get, instead of actual emotion, you get a lot of hyperbole and a lot of over dramatized kind of moments. But in this movie, there's a lot of kind of really sensitive feelings handled really, really well and convincingly. So yeah, big thumbs up to James Gunn for that. His work on the script has been brilliant. So yeah, excellent work. Okay, right, let's get to the negatives. So was there anything in the movie that didn't quite work for you? Anything that you downright disliked, or some things that just kind of left you a bit indifferent? Richard, I know you mentioned the Sovereign, and you said you felt they were, the appeal of them didn't quite work for you throughout the whole movie. Was there anything else aside from that that didn't quite work for you?
The pacing, the pacing of it didn't flow as well as the first one.
Hmm.
Like I said earlier, like it's not that I think Guardians is a bad movie. Like if anything, far from it. Still a really really good movie. But the first movie had a strong three arc story. So like it had an amazing beginning, middle, and an end. It just worked perfectly. And I think it's probably, if not easily, my top three Marvel films. Just due for to other factors as well. But this one, it didn't flow as smoothly as the others. Um, well as much as the first one. It felt a bit all over the place at certain points, but still managed last minute to drag it to where it needed to be. Um, the main scene for me that really just kind of threw me out there was kind of just like when Peter and Ego started having Superman General Zod fight,
Mm.
where it just kind of like and it was like, the thing is, and the reason why it doesn't really grate on me is because the kind of sci-fi that the Guardians does and the kind of sci-fi that James Gunn is kind of aiming for is literally one of those things where it's just a psychedelic trip. Like I said, like they sit down and they'd be like, okay, listen, what kind of crazy shit can we think of? And then they think of it and they'd be like, okay, cool. How about if we do some crazy shit on top of that shit? So I can understand the reason why they've done it, because it's almost to shock you and to make you not expect what to expect. But it just felt like it just didn't. It felt like to me like it didn't belong, and that's only, and the main reason is because it kind of dragged out a bit. And then even the bit when Peter changes into like the Pac-Man, it did kind of save the whole fight for me. But at the same time, I was like, Pac-Man, I understand that you're this big man child, but Pac-Man isn't the thing that would pop up in your head. Like you've been around and you've seen some things now. So I'm sure you could have thought up something a bit more than that. And I do try and reference that before, like, you know, when is doing harnessing the energy with ego, and all you can think of is like this ball. And so they're trying to make it that, you know, trying to make it that he, you know, that he's a simple fella.
Mm.
But it still felt like, no, that's just a bit of a cheap joke.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me it was probably the one negative for me was like the ego interaction with Peter early on, when they first kind of meet and stuff. I don't know why, but maybe it's a pacing thing, maybe it's the way that the script was written, but there's a point where it just feels like it's going on a bit too long, and they're kind of like laying it on a little bit thick, the whole kind of, oh my god, I've got a dad now, I love you too, son, come here, I'm going to show you all of these wonderful powers that you've now got because you're part of me. And it, yeah, that was a tiny bit like it grated on me a little bit after a while. And yeah, the ball joke was, yeah, that was a bit too on the nose, really. Considering there's actually some very funny jokes in this film, that one was a little bit like, it felt a bit flat for me. Didn't quite work. So yeah, I would probably echo your thoughts on the pacing thing. I think there is a slight issue there with the pacing. It's not a major problem, but it just was a bit, yeah, not too sure. Um, yeah, and aside from that, I think that was really the only major kind of issue, and it wasn't even a major one, but that was really the only kind of major nitpick I had. Alvin, how about you? Was there anything that kind of didn't quite work for you?
Honestly, not really. I mean, the points that you guys have brought up, yeah, I do pretty much agree with, but it wasn't enough for me to kind of like actually dislike him that much, or it hadn't really no effect on me. I know they weren't like perfect points or whatever, but for me, I just wanted to know what was going to happen next and how the team were going to get back together again, and like what was going to happen at the end and all that. That's all I was into. So like the pacing issue didn't particularly affect me that much. But now your points are valid, but I'm not bothered by them. You know what I mean, by those elements. So there wasn't really anything for me.
Okay, cool. Fair enough. No problem. One thing I did really like, what I forgot to mention, was as we're coming towards the end of this, was the joke at the end with the Microsoft Zune.
Oh God, that was amazing.
When
Hold
I
on,
watched
with the what? Say again.
The
the
Zune,
Microsoft Zune,
the Zune. It's like an iPad, but it's
yeah,
Windows.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Zune.
yeah, 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 yeah. Sorry, yeah.
yeah. It's when because
Luca,
when he
Luca, sorry. Out, please. Go see mommy. Yeah, I know it's a shadow.
so
Sorry, yeah, carry on.
yeah, I was saying the joke with the Microsoft Zune I really liked, because when I was watching it in the cinema, you could tell that like 50% of the audience didn't get it, because they were like sort of like between the ages of 12 and 15, and they were like, huh? They were like, what?
I almost considered getting a Zune once back in the day.
Oh, serious?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, because I thought, well, I'm not going to get an iPod. I might
Hmm.
get a Zune. And then I was like, no, I don't want a fucking Zune. Short-lived the Zune, man. Just
Very. And
it's
there's
very
how
quick.
long? How long did they last?
Not long.
not long at all. I think it was about not even 2 years before they pulled them out of production, to be honest.
I'm thinking
Jeez.
like around what, like 2007, that kind of
Yeah,
period.
yeah. It was about 2006, 7 was when it came out. And by about 2008, yeah, Microsoft had pulled the plug on that one. They were like, nope, we obviously misjudged that one.
If it had been an iPod, it would have been too familiar, I reckon. And we would have just
Yes,
been like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we would have fact it's a Zune, and like, if you know what a Zune is, you're like,
yeah,
you're like, oh, well, it's a bit shit. It's not
yeah,
as good as an iPod. That's
yeah,
why it's fucking funny.
yeah,
You
when
know, no,
300
it wasn't
songs.
even that. You know,
yeah,
you know, what the funny thing was, is the thing when he says like, "Yeah, man, it can hold something like 300 songs,"
Yeah.
yeah.
and he just looks like, "What?"
And Peter's like, what? 300 songs? Like his mind is blown at the fact that this device can hold 300 songs. Like, yeah, that was great. That was great. So, yeah, that was a very, very good gag actually, in the way it was worked and stuff as well. So, yeah, that was cool. I enjoyed that. All right, man. Well, let's wrap the review up. So, what's your final scores, guys, for this one? Sorry, Alvin, you can
Oh
go
right.
first.
Well, what rating system are we using?
Out of
Yeah,
10,
yeah.
mate. Out of 10.
Oh, we're doing out of 10.
Keep it simple.
Um, I don't think I can give it a perfect score just because that's like, you know, it's it's good. It is really, I'm gonna say like 8, just because it's good all around. But I think going anything higher than that, I'd be saying it's perfection, which not a lot of films are perfect. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go 8. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Advise everyone to go and see it. It's a great time at the cinema. Great laugh, great action, great science fiction, and if you like your MCU stuff, you'll love it.
Hmm. Hmm. No doubt. Rich, how about you, man?
Oh, I think I'm gonna give it. I'd give it like a 7.5.
You're gonna give it. Sorry,
Yeah.
say that again. You cut out.
S- Sorry, I'm gonna give it 7.5.
7.5. Okay.
Yeah, 7.5. 7.5. I mean, it could easily be an 8, easily. But I think just for a couple of the things that they did so well in the first one that they didn't do as well in this second part. So like, maybe the music and the pacing. Yeah. So basically, just for those two things, I'll knock off half a mark. But it's still an amazing film.
Hmm. I think for me, I'm gonna give it a. I think I'm gonna give it an 8 as well. An 8 out of 10 because I think I overall I really enjoyed it. Um, there was some quite innovative things thrown in terms of what they did with the special effects for the film that were really really impressive. The characters just seem to go from strength to strength in this series as well as individuals and as a team. Um, James Gunn has just done a terrific job in kind of breathing life into this cosmic side of the MCU. And he's really kind of made the Guardians a household name now through his work that he's done, and this movie kind of carries that on. I guess yeah, the only negatives would be, as said, the music perhaps not being as memorable as the first film, and the couple of scenes there where the pacing kind of lags a little bit, but aside from that, there's so much to enjoy about the film, and the humor, the action is very good. It's exciting. It's well framed. It's well filmed. There's so many good things about it that you have to give it a high score. Really, I'm with you, Alvin. I can't quite give it a 9 because then you're kind of pushing it, and I think
Mm.
Guardians 1 for me is a 9 out of 10. And I don't think this one is as strong as Guardians of the Galaxy 1. So yeah, I think 8 is going to be the score I'm settling on. So yep, we'll call it that. All right, listeners. Well, there you go. That's our review part done. As said, we've given it a very strong recommendation. So if you haven't seen it and you're listening to this for some reason, then go and see it because the movie is really, really good and you're really going to have a fun time, as Alvin said, at the cinema. So make sure you go and check it out. All right, well, let's have a quick chat, guys, about where we think the Guardians of the Galaxy are kind of going next from a storytelling point of view. There was quite a lot of end credit scenes, actually 5, I think it was, more than any other MCU film. Some of them were just kind of like running gags, sight gags, and things like that. But we did get one in particular, which actually kind of gives us a hint as to where they're going. Well, we actually got two that give us some hints. So yeah, looking at those kind of end credit scenes, we're just going to have a brief chat about where we think the franchise is going. So Rich, you and I were talking about this film when we first saw it, and we were talking about the cameo appearances of some of the original Guardians of the Galaxy from the comic book.
Yeah.
And in the post-credit scenes, we got that scene where we got introduced to the original team, and we got the sense that they're going to enter the fray once more. So, what part do you think the original Guardians might play going forward in the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise?
I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even tell you what part they're gonna play,
Hmm.
but it's definitely gonna be interesting. Like I said, there's a lot of people out there who won't know that there's even an original incarnation of like the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Hmm.
So they'll probably just be seeing like they're probably just sitting there scratching their heads, or or going to Google or listening to Rob explains.
Hmm.
Um, but as to how they're going to enter the fray, I reckon there'll be like a sneak attack, or like you see the same way how they brought in Ant-Man for Civil War, where it's
Hmm.
kind of like that character who doesn't really belong, but he has a purpose. Like there's something that only he will be able to specifically do, and it's kind of like like an ace up their sleeve. I reckon this original team of Guardians, that I reckon that's the part they might play in the Infinity War thing, where they'll be like, doing something major, but it'll always be in the background. It's like the same way how you've got like the defenders on Earth, and like they deal with like low scale things, but they still make a difference. And then you've got the Avengers dealing with things like on a much bigger scale. So that's how I think they'll be dealt with. Because so far there hasn't been anything or any form of news of them like having their own film. It's just been mentioned that they're going to be signed up to appear in other franchises, or specifically the Infinity War saga.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's been a lot of interviews, obviously, with Kevin Feige and with James Gunn because the movie's due for release in the US this weekend, I think. So there's been like a lot of promo interviews, and a lot of it has been talking about the future of the Guardians, which is why I've asked this question. Um, and one of the things that both Feige and Gunn have said is that basically, this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of not just the Guardians and their story, but also the cosmic universe as a whole that they're building within the MCU. They're looking to really expand that out. So with that in mind, I kind of saw it as the original Guardians being like a bridge to kind of further explore that side of the universe. Whether they'll get their own spin-off or whether they're going to make cameos and things like that, I guess we don't know. I think your guess is probably the best one, in that they might pop up in Avengers Infinity War, and they will probably make an appearance in Guardians 3. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a way that they're kind of worked in as almost antagonists to the Guardians team in Guardians 3. That might happen. So that's something interesting that I think is bubbling under the surface. But Alvin, how about you? Did you have any thoughts about the original team's inclusion?
I had no fucking clue. All I know is that seeing Stallone in MCU movie wasn't as weird as I thought it was. He actually fit quite well. And like, because at first I was like, I thought it was just going to be a little cameo maybe. And then obviously when he was actually quite an important character to Yandu anyway, I was kind of like, I was totally all right with it. I was like, oh, he fits. You know what I mean? James Gunn is like, I suppose, a master of like placing things that shouldn't necessarily go in things that do go, if you know what I mean. But no, I'm looking forward to seeing how kind of Ving Rhames, Stallone, and Michelle Yeoh will kind of play into things, because like you guys said, if they're like the originals and that, they must have quite an important part to play in some ways, surely. I don't know. I have no idea, but I think they're going to be quite an interesting part, because I don't think you'd cast actors of that caliber if if they weren't going to become important later on. And from what they said in their post-credit scene, it looks like maybe all the Ravagers will unite against Adam Warlock or whatever and lead the fray, I suppose. that's the only thing I can guess. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting either way because they keep hitting us with things that we don't expect to see. So
yeah, very much so. That's one thing they've done throughout this franchise is pull out stuff that you would not expect to see. We got like cameos in this film, didn't we? 'Cause I think he
Mm.
featured twice. So yeah, like there you go. Was Cosmo in it as well? I can't remember.
No, but
no, it's the
no,
first
you
one.
don't see him. Yeah, but you see Howard the Duck twice
Yeah,
in this one.
Yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
see Howard the Duck twice, but yeah, I can't remember seeing Cosmo. But oh well, there you go. Yeah. So I think it's very interesting. So yeah, definitely we'll have to keep a close eye on that as that develops. I think Guardians 3 is due out after Infinity War, so it will. I guess I'm assuming whatever happens in Infinity War may have a knock-on effect into what happens in Guardians 3, but I guess we shall see. Now there was another post-credit sequence that stood out to me. Which is what we think is going to be the introduction of a very, very iconic Marvel character. Now, resident kind of comic book guru, could you give a little bit of like context to that post-credit scene in terms of who Adam Warlock is? You mentioned his name earlier, but I imagine
Yeah.
a few people are probably confused by that name. So if you could just give them a little bit of a breakdown as to who Adam Warlock is and why he may be important to the Guardians films going forward, that would be cool.
Okay, so Adam Warlock is he's not the original antagonist. Well, he's not the original person that fights against Thanos, but they end up when he is introduced and he does gain his cosmic status. Him and Thanos are the people that constantly go back and forth. Adam Warlock in a comic book is created by a human organization or think tank. They actually are a think tank called AIM, which stands for Advanced Idea Mechanics. And they create him, he starts off as this thing called him. Like he's just basically just bred to be the perfect genetic being. Gold skin, gold hair, gold eyes, super strength, and he's almost like a kid in like an adult's body. And for the first part of his introduction into the Marvel universe, he just goes around just fighting against anybody anybody and anything. So whether it be a villain, whether it be a hero, he doesn't know any better. And then he eventually gets adopted by, I think it's uh the High Evolutionary, who's basically another geneticist or really really good geneticist in the Marvel Comics universe, who lives on Wonder Mountain. Wonder Mountain is basically like a hidden mountain somewhere in the Marvel universe, in the Marvel landscape on Earth, that just has loads of craziness happening, and I think it's basically where the Celestials landed and infuse the cosmic egg into the actual Earth, which allows that special gene in humans to have special abilities, such as becoming mutants or to gain specific powers, through external means. But anyway, sticking back to Adam Warlock. So basically, Adam Warlock eventually becomes the keeper of the Soul Gem, which we all know is one of the gems, which is the gem that belongs on the Vision's forehead, isn't it?
No, that's the Mind Stone. Vision's
That's the
forehead.
mind gem. So the
The
soul
Soul
gem
Gem
hasn't
is
actually
the
been
one
found.
that's, yeah, it's still out there. The Soul Gem. We don't know
It's
where.
still out there. Yes, yeah, yeah. So Adam Warlock is basically going to is in the comic books. He's the person who looks after the soul gem and actually defeats Thanos the second time Thanos pops up by stealing his soul. So yeah, so that's something to look forward to. I like the fact that it's also a role reversal in the way how the Sovereign are creating Adam Warlock. Because in the comic book, Adam Warlock is created, and then AIM tried to create another version of Adam Warlock, but a female version, and it's called her. And she ends up being called somebody called Kismet. And Kismet eventually goes on to have a child with Quasar, and that child becomes something else I can't remember. But I've actually just made a mistake. Adam Warlock isn't created by Advanced Idea Mechanics. He's created by a small think tank, which consists of either 3 or 4 people, and they're called the Enclave. And basically, this all happens in the Fantastic Four series during the 60s. But it's definitely worth the read, because that the character of Adam Warlock really gains some gravitas from the 60s into the 70s, where like cosmic balance and cosmic battles really, really just kind of just took it to another level.
Mm-hmm. Is it Kirby that created Adam Warlock? Am I right in thinking that, Jack Kirby, or was it someone else?
You know what? In that respect, that question I couldn't even answer. Sorry.
No, that's fair enough. That's one to look up in the
Damn it! I failed you. I failed you.
Hang your head in shame. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine, man. But thank you for the explanation. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, Alvin, are you excited for the appearance of Adam Warlock? Did you know much about the character before?
Unlike Richardpedia, I I didn't know that much about him. The only time I'd ever come across him was in Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I think it was in like season 2. I think there was like a Guardians of the Galaxy 2-parter where the Guardians came to Earth, and I'm pretty sure it involved Adam Warlock. But I think this version, he didn't remember like being out in space or some shit like that, and yada yada. It's been a while since I've seen the episode, so like when I obviously seen him in the film and remembering the cocoon in the collector's place from the first one.
Yeah.
Then I was like, okay, and I know what this is going to be. He's like immensely powerful and all that kind of business. But it'll be interesting to see now that Peter's obviously not getting any powers. But nah, in terms of Adam Warlock, I didn't know terribly that much apart from the basic concept.
Oh, in fact, sorry to cut you off. There
Yeah.
was another Easter egg that they didn't really dwell upon. But see, at the end when the credits are rolling, and you see everybody dancing, and they're like, the whole thing. Did you see the Grandmaster in
Yes.
one of the things
Yes,
as well?
I did.
Yeah.
That's a good spot. Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, that's interesting as well because it a lot of people, when you and I were talking about the 4 trailer, Richard, in our podcast 2 weeks ago, we were saying about how the visual stylings of 4 are very similar to 4 Ragnarok were very similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, and that it's obviously they're trying to establish a visual language almost to say, okay, the cosmic side of the MCU is going to look a certain way, feel a certain way. It's going to have a certain similarity, and obviously that's going to mean that characters are going to start crossing over. And yes, I did notice that in the end credits, right at the end, they slipped in the Grandmaster in there as well. So yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting. It makes me all the more curious now as to what's going to happen with Thor Ragnarok and what kind of like story they're telling there as well. Because clearly they're pushing this crossover between those two things. So yeah, that's very, very interesting. Did you notice that, Alvin?
Yeah, the Grandmaster. Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah. So that is makes me, as I said, very, very curious for Ragnarok. All right, cool, man. Well, I think that does it, really. We've kind of covered as much as we can, I think, with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and the Guardians franchise and everything like that. So hopefully, listeners, you've got a good idea of where you think the story might be going. But if you see it differently to us, then by all means, let us know. You can contact us on Twitter at Wulong Talks, on our official Facebook page, which is /Wulong Talks, or you can email us anytime at wulongtalkspodcast@gmail.com. You can get us there, as said, anytime, and we'd love to hear your thoughts as well, especially if you've seen the movie already and you have any theories about it, or if you enjoyed it, or even if you didn't enjoy it. You're welcome to share your opinions with us. They're always welcome. Okay, let me quickly do some big ups and some shout outs as well before we do anything else. Guys, you doing anything cool this weekend? Anything that you've got planned? Anything fun?
No, I don't think so. No,
Same, in
no,
the same boat.
no. You know what? In fact, I've got quite a few things to catch up on. So,
Oh, okay, cool.
TV wise, there's on Netflix. I need to catch up on Dear White People.
Hmm.
What else is there? I need to catch up on Samurai Jack. Yeah, so those 2 things definitely at the top of my list because I've just been waiting for them for ages. So yeah.
Cool. I'm going to try and catch up with Into the Badlands and also American Gods as
Oh
well,
yeah.
because that started. So yeah, listeners, if you're fans of American Gods, if you've seen the first episode and you're enjoying it, don't worry, we will get into that as well. It's just we haven't had time and things have been dropping left, right, and center. So yeah, we'll get into that definitely. But Alvin, anything you're doing this week that's cool?
Not well, apart from catching up on comics. That's pretty much, I mean, in terms of TV shows, I'm up to date pretty much. I've sacked off a few shows in it a few
Mm.
weeks back. So yeah, no, I'm easy. I'm good. Got free time.
Cool, cool. Fair enough, mate. Fair dues. All right. Well, I'm going to let you listeners know something as well. Give you some further information about our next episode because we're actually going to be doing a bonus podcast that will be coming out tomorrow, which will be breaking down the big trailers that we've had this week, and in particular, we'll be focusing on two of them. We'll be focusing on the trailer for the Defenders. That Richard kind of mentioned the Defenders earlier on. We're definitely going to get into that because that was the top of my most anticipated things for 2017 in the 2016 roundup podcast. So yeah, I think we've got to break that trailer down because there's a lot of good stuff in there. And yeah, as I said, I'll let you know how I feel about that and how excited I am about that as well. And the guys will give you their input. And we'll also break down the trailer for The Dark Tower as well, which is the first movie in the kind of Stephen King universe franchise. That's due out, I believe, in August in America. I'm not sure when the UK release date is for that, so I'll look that up. But anyway, if you're following us, look out for that because I said that will be out tomorrow evening. So make sure you follow us for that, and we'll give you a full breakdown on it. Right, let me do some quick shout outs. I've got to rattle through these really quickly because we're running out of time. So let me just go through these real quick. In terms of other podcasts, I need to big up the Just in Time podcast. Really funny show. Make sure you check them guys out. It's funny every week. By Chance podcast, Drift and Ramble, the Pod Couple, Kung Fu Drive-In podcast is really good. Check that one out especially if you're a martial arts movie fan. Really good show. The Broken Elevator, Podcast Brothers, the Crazy Town podcast, and our friend Cheryl and Miss Mad News as well with the Team Biscuits podcast. That one's a really good one, so check that one out. In terms of individual big ups, shout outs to our friend George, shout out to Miss L, shout out to Joan, to Gabriella, to Graceful Viking, to Dean and to Dion, and a big up as well to the guys from Mayamada. Rich, did you want to have a shout out for anybody or to say big up to anybody or plug anything?
I think you just said hello to the whole world for me. So like, I'm just gonna say thank you, thank you for the sun and the moon. How about that, man?
Of course. And Alvin, any vids going up on the Mank Geek channel this week?
Yeah, probably. I've just been a bit lazy just because, well, why the fuck not? So yeah, there probably will be something over the weekend. Maybe, probably. Yeah, there probably will. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Wicked. All right. Well, we'll head on out of here. But before we go, Rich, do you want to let people know where they can holler at you?
Yep. Rich Reviews. Rich underscore reviews on Instagram. And it's Rich Reviews on Twitter. And obviously, we've got the Instagram for Wulong Talks, and obviously on the website, so www.wulongtalks.com.
Cool. Alvin?
Yeah, you can catch me on, I always say Facebook. It's not Facebook. It's Instagram and Twitter at Big A85GL. You can find my YouTube via that as well. Or you can just go to Big A the Man Geek, and you should be able to bring me up that way.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot for listening, listeners. Don't forget, if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes or on Stitcher or on Acast and you're liking what we're doing, please like it, please share it, please subscribe, and please give us your feedback too. We definitely want to hear from you, especially if you've got ideas or things that you want us to talk about in future shows and things like that. We're very, very open guys here. So yeah, please do that. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna shut up now. I've said enough. All right, let's say good night, man. Good night. Say good night, Rich.
May the force be with you. Yes, I did it.
Say good night, Alvin.
Night, people.
And it's a good night from me. So we'll see you later, folks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.